الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كيف حالكم جميعا يا أيها الأخوات, our brothers and sisters in Islam? We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nashkuru Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to continue نواصل يعني لهذه الدرس, to continue this tremendous benefit or this tremendous class which is known as Manillah, who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A glimpse into his names and his attributes by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyyah, taken from a tremendous section from his famous poems known as Nunniyah or Nunniyah to Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah ta'ala alayh, with the tremendous explanation of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen rahmatullah alayh. This is taken from the section dealing with the Tawheed of Anbiya wal Mursaleen, the Tawheed of the prophets and the messengers. And the Tawheed of the prophets and the messengers, for those who do not know, and for those who have not been following this series from the beginning, then we're going to recap some of it, inshallah, to give you a better picture. The Tawheed of the Anbiya wal Mursaleen, it is that which divides in two categories. They call it Qawliyun wa Fi'li. They said it's statements and actions. The Tawheed of the prophets and the messengers consist of statements and actions. Statements such as statement of the heart, statement of the tongue, actions of the heart, and actions of the limbs. And then they continue to say that statement is divided, as Ibn Qayyim goes on to describe. Statement is divided into two categories. That which is known as Salbiyun wa Thubutiyun. Salbiyun is those things which we negate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those things which we negate, that is necessitates that we negate them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you have Thubutiyun, those things which we affirm for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those things which we negate or either affirm for Allah Jalla wa Ala is what he has negate or affirm for himself, or what his messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has informed us authentically, which he has a negate or affirm for himself. And the negation is divided into two categories, as Ibn Qayyim goes on to explain. And that those two categories consist of what we say, muttasilun wa munfasil. That the negation of those things which we require to negate from Allah Jalla wa Ala, then that falls under two categories. Those things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have tied to his essence, and those things which are separated from Allah. Those things such as which is tied, which is muttasil, is those things such as forgetfulness, heedlessness, sleepy, tired, weariness, these things, etc., as those things which we negate, death. These things cannot happen to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we say that these are the things which are connected to Allah's that, to his essence. But we are necessitated and binded to negate these things from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those things which are munfasil, as the things that which we negate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's outside of Allah, such as Allah having a partner, or having a spouse, or having a child, or Allah Jalla wa Ala having someone to that can intercede along with him without Allah Jalla wa Ala permission, etc. So these are things that we negate. And then the other type of negation is salbiya, is to negate those uyub, all uyub, kullu uyub, all flaws and defaults are to be negated from Allah Jalla wa Ala attributes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attributes, the opposite actually hold true. What is the opposite is that Allah Jalla wa Ala attributes are complete and perfect to the utmost degree. All right, they are complete and perfect to the utmost degree. This is the Tawheed of the Anbiya wal Mursaleen. As far as the things which we affirm for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which he has affirmed for himself and his messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has affirmed in his authentic sunnah, then those things is we recognize that first and foremost that the attributes, the awsaf of Allah Jalla wa Ala, is those things which are lofty, those things which are perfect, those things which are beautiful, and those things which does not have any comparison whatsoever amongst the creation. And that Allah Jalla wa Ala is the one who is ulu, and that his ulu is divided into two categories, meaning his loftiness, his elevation. Allah Jalla wa Ala ulu is divided into two categories. Those two categories that we covered so far was that Allah Jalla wa Ala is ulu bi dhatihi, he's ulu within his own self. meaning Allah Jalla wa Ala is ulu, he is lofty and elevated within his own self, as well as bi sifati. He is also lofty in his attributes. The people of deviation, the people of kalam and rhetoric, they say that Allah Jalla wa Ala is only ulu bi sifatihi wa laysa bi dhati. He is only elevated and high within his attributes, but he's not lofty and high within his essence. And this is a contradiction that Shaykh Qayyim rahmatullah ta'ala mentioned, that this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That Allah Jalla wa Ala must be also ulu within himself as well as his attributes. And then we covered the istiwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, showing that the istiwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is real haqiqatan. And it is that which yaliku jalalahu, that which befits Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. And that Allah Jalla wa Ala have rose above the throne in a manner that befits his majesty. And that we believe in it, and that it does not have any ta'wil. We don't distort its meaning, we don't change it to mean that Allah Jalla wa Ala is stawla, begin to conquer the throne. Okay, Allah Jalla wa Ala is above all things. Nothing can contain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Qayyim goes on, Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, comment on this section, he gave us about 5 different proofs. Those 5 different proofs to establish the istiwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we as Muslims, we need to understand the different types of proofs. And you need to also understand the different types of evidence which Allah Jalla wa Ala uses in his book. Allah Jalla wa Ala, he don't only just use wahy, which the book is itself. The Quran has wahy, that's called revelation, that can either come from 2 sources, the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah Jalla wa Ala also used by way of, in the book of Allah Jalla wa Ala, he always used ways of proof, which is called aqliyyum. That which is dalilu aqliyyum, that which is rational proof. Allah Jalla wa Ala, he tells you, hal yanduruna fil ard, have they not traveled throughout the earth? Okay, alam tara, have they not seen? Allah Jalla wa Ala is telling you to use rational, your rational faculties to be able to bear witness to what happened. Allah Jalla wa Ala also, another way of proof is that which is done by way of not just the Quran, the Sunnah, and the ijma' of the Salaf, and the adillat of aql, but that which is done and perceived, hissiyyun, okay, that which you see, such as a dua being answered, mustajab. So Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullah ta'ala, he benefited us tremendously, and it's just a recap of what we covered so far, extensively dealing with this series. Also, we dealt with Allah Jalla wa Ala, we affirmed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is murid, and that his name is not al-murid, because the names of Allah Jalla wa Ala, one of the qa'idah or min al-qawa'id, one of the principles from the principles of the names of Allah Jalla wa Ala is that they cannot be divided into categories. Okay, every name of Allah Jalla wa Ala, the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a sifa that can be that can be extracted from it, but they are not divided. Murid is known as will or intent or desire. So we know that Allah Jalla wa Ala, his will is divided into 2 categories. You have that which is called as what is known as iradatu kawniyya wa iradatu shar'iyya. Iradatu kawniyya is that which is a universal will, that which Allah Jalla wa Ala loves and do not love. But however, due to a comprehensive wisdom and benevolent wisdom, he allowed it to happen. That which Allah loves and do not love. Then you have that which is iradatu shar'iyya, that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. Okay, so we covered that. We also covered Allah Jalla wa Ala not only being murid, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is hayyun. And we understand that Allah Jalla wa Ala hayyun is different than our hayat. And that from the hayyun, from Allah being a living being, is that Allah Jalla wa Ala attribute is that he's alive. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alive is kamila. All right? Allah Jalla wa Ala is alive and kamil. He's an eternal being. He's everlasting. He will not cease to perish. He will not cease to exist. Do you understand? We understand this from Allah Jalla wa Ala, that this is the creator that we worship. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mutakallim, that Allah speaks. He doesn't speak from thin air. Okay? He speaks with words that are organized, sound that can actually be heard. He speaks whenever he feels like it, whenever he wills, whenever he likes, whatever he says. This is Allah Jalla wa Ala speaks. And from Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that we confirm that Allah Jalla wa Ala speech is from his sifat. It is from his attributes. It is from his sifat. It is from his attributes. We confirm that the speech is from Allah Jalla wa Ala attributes, and that we do not deny that speech is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that it was created, like many of the deviant differences. Ibn Qayyim continues to let us know that not only Allah Jalla wa Ala is hayyun muridun, يعني mutakallimun, but Allah Jalla wa Ala is filled with rahmah. That the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in authenticated hadith that Allah Jalla wa Ala have 100 portions. He said, rather, my Lord have 100 portions of rahmah. And he gave only one portion. He kept 99 of it, 99 parts of it to himself, and he only gave one portion to the creation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his mercy is extensive. His mercy is extremely extensive and is divided into two categories. His mercy is divided that where it's all expansive to those who are Muslim and non-Muslims alike, for all the creation alike, that is his Rahman. Allahu Jalla wa Ala Rahman, that is not specific to the believers alone. And his Rahim, Allahu Jalla wa Ala, this is the mercy that he chooses only specific for those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we also continue. Then Ibn Qayyim started going to some of the names and the attributes of Allah Jalla wa Ala to explain to us what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And those names such as Allah being Qadirun, that Allah Jalla wa Ala is all capable, which is free of any defects, and that he is free of any weaknesses, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is strong, that he is all capable and he is strong, and that capability is coupled with knowledge. That a person can be capable, as Ibn Uthaymeen says, an individual can ask you, can you fix such and such? And you might say, you might have the ability to do it, but you don't have the knowledge and to fix it. So there's no fa'ida for that. But with Allah Jalla wa Ala, he has the knowledge as well as the capability. He has the knowledge as well as the capability. These are the things that we were able to cover so far dealing with Allah Jalla wa Ala. And then we reached up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tremendous names. And from amongst his two tremendous names is the names that we're dealing with now, which is As-Sami' wal-Basir. And we learned that As-Sami', that the name As-Sami' for Allah Jalla wa Ala is true, haqiqatan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears, but it's divided into two categories. You have the Sami' in which Allah Jalla wa Ala hears all things, yani itraq al-aswat. And then you have the Sami' in where Allah Jalla wa Ala, he ijabatu da'wah, that Allah responds to the supplication. Allah responds to the supplication. And that the first category is divided into three categories. In other words, meaning Allah can hear all things. Allah Jalla wa Ala hears things via his support and aid. Allah Jalla wa Ala hears things via his threats. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala began to ihatatul sam' Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarifying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hearing is all encompassive. Hear all things that are good and all things that are bad. This is where we have stopped at, alhamdulillah, since yesterday. So we're going to pick back up off of that. And anything that I've missing in between, you can always refer back to the actual, the actual classes. What I plan on doing, once we pretty much wrapping up the series, by the permission of Allah, I'm going to put this in a PDF. And I want to file it down so that you all can have a copy of it on how, who is Allah Jalla wa Ala, and how it's laid down with the Sunnah wal Jama'ah. I might even put in the footnotes the evidence that the Sheikh might use from some ayats that you can actually use, or some hadith that you can actually use, so it can help you have a reference point, inshallah ta'ala, if you're not beginning to already take some notes. Tayyib. The Sheikh now, Ibn Qayyim, he goes on to his next piece of poetry. He says, وَلِكُلِّ صَوْتٍ مِّنْهُ سَمْعٌ حَاضِرٌ فَالسِّرُّ وَالْإِعْلَانُ مُسْتَوِيَانِ. Okay? So he says, وَلِكُلِّ صَوْتٍ مِّنْهُ سَمْعٌ حَاضِرٌ. Ibn Qayyim says in this line of poetry. This is the first half of the line of poetry. Shaykh Uthaymeen, rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, he says, كُلُّ صَوْتٍ فَلِلَّهِ مِنْهُ سَمْعٌ. All sound, all voices, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from it, Allah hears. Okay? He says, وَهَذِهِ كَلِمَةٌ مِنَ ابن قيم رحمه الله يحتمل أن معناها لكل صوت سمع. He said, this is the speech from the author, Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah. And he says it's possible that what it means is that all voice is heard by Allah. All voice is heard. He says possible what it means is لِكُلِّ صَوْتٍ سَمْعٌ. Every voice is heard. Okay? That's what it's possible what it means. يعني لا يكفى عليه أي صوت. Meaning that no voice is obscure from Allah Jalla wa Ala. There is no voice, no sound that is obscure from Allah. He says, كُلُّ صَوْتٍ فَالسَّمْعُ اللَّهُ حَاضِرٌ لَهُ. Every voice, okay, every sound that is heard, Allah Jalla wa Ala can hear it and he is present. And he explained this inshallah. He said, يحتمل أن معنى أن السمع الله سبحانه وتعالى إذا تجدد المسموع فهذا السمع الذي سمعه الله جل وعلا متجدد لكن أصل السمع زلي فمثلا صوت متكلم متى سمعه الله. So we must understand that Allah Jalla wa Ala, the hearing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if the masmur, the one, yani, is being, if the sound itself, or the one who's actually speaking, or if the one who actually being heard, if he renews it, فَهَذَا السَّمْعُ الَّذِي سَمِعَهُ اللَّهُ, Allah still will hear it. Allah still will hear this person. He said, وَتَجَدِّ لَكِنَّ أَصْلَ السَّمْعِ أَزَلِيٌّ. However, the origin, the foundation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hearing is azali, I mean, it's eternal. Okay, the hearing of Allah Jalla wa Ala is eternal. He says, for example, the voice of the speaker, this is a question he asks. The voice of the speaker, do Allah hears it when he's speaking? Meaning that he have to speak the actual words first and then Allah can hear it. This is the question he asks. He says, جواب حين تكلم بي لم يسمعه من قبل بخلاف العلم فعلم يتعلق بالمستقبل لكن سمع لا يكون إلا بعد حدوث المسموع. So pay attention closely with the Shaykh is getting ready to say here. In regards, do a person have to speak first in order for Allah to hear it? All right. The Shaykh, he says here, in regards, so pay attention to this. He says here, he says, whereas if a person was to speak, no one will hear it. يعني من قبل بخلاف العلم. يعني in other words, the one who have knowledge. يعني the opposition of that is the person has to have knowledge. يعني why? Because the knowledge, he says here, because the knowledge is that which is connected to the mustaqbal, that which will happen in the future, future occurrence. Okay. He says, لكن السمع لا يكون إلا بعد حدوث المسموع. He says, however, hearing doesn't take place until after the words are actually spoken. But this is not the case with Allah. He says, so the speech of the author is possible for this or that. He says, he said, what also is possible that the author can mean it, Ibn Qayyim, he can intend it that the Allah Jalla wa Ala hearing is all inclusive, that all sound is heard by Allah Jalla wa Ala as if he is present there. And it's also possible to mean is that in every voice that is heard, specifically even at the time that when it is spoken, he says, he asks a question. So is this occurrence here, is it is for the attribute or is it for the hearer? It's jawab masmur. It's for the one who is the one who's hearing. As for Allah Jalla wa Ala, then he continues to hear, meaning Allah doesn't stop hearing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hear everybody's words. He don't have to wait for you to actually speak because he have the knowledge already for the mustaqbal. So he already know what you're going to say. You understand? So in other words, Allah Jalla wa Ala ilm is he's already aware of what's going to happen. So he knows what you're going to say before you're going to say it. But as far as you happen to speak the actual words to be heard, then that's something for humans to understand or something like that. But a lot of knowledge already precedes that. You know what you're going to say, you know what you're going to do, have you not did it, or if you did do it, what would have been the outcome? Allah Jalla knowledge is that extensive, all right? He already knows these things. He says, the next line of poetry, he says the end of the last half of the line of poetry that we read, he says, so when it comes to private or public, audible and inaudible, it's equal with Allah. If you don't speak, if you was to whisper, if you was to be silent, that's still equal with Allah. Allah still can hear it. All right? And if you do speak and it's audible and it's legible, Allah still can hear. So they both are equal with Allah Jalla wa Ala. It's not one exceptionally well over the other. They're both equal. Okay? So he says, here Ibn Qayyim continues, he says, وَالسَّمْعُ مِنْهُ وَاسِعُ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَا يَخْفَى عَلَيْهِ بَعِيدُهَا وَالدَّانِ. So he says the hearing from Allah Jalla wa Ala is expansive, meaning وَاسِعُ الْأَصْوَاتِ, meaning all of the voices you can think of. And imagine you can hear it. I mean, we watch Hollywood, we watch some different shows and things like that, and they show you some different abilities, different creatures who can have ear sight to hear this and that. So you get like a little amazing. But Allah Jalla wa Ala can hear. And his hearing is eternal. And he hears all things. Even if it was a distinguishing voice, specifically, Allah can hear that voice. From out of countless billion souls, Allah hears that voice. You can't even fathom the depth of this. You're not even able to fathom the depth of someone hearing everything all the times. Hearing everything that takes place, who's above the seven heavens, but still can hear you. Henceforth, the Prophet ﷺ, he said to the companions when they were running down the hill and they were shouting Allahu Akbar and shouting Subhanallah, he says to them, you're not calling on one who is deaf. In other words, Allah Jalla wa'ala can hear you. Even from down here on the earth, Allah Jalla wa'ala can hear you above the seven heavens. And this is something that we must understand. There's not a moment, you never got a word in except Allah heard it. All right? You never did anything that was heard or had except that Allah Jalla wa'ala already was privy to it. So when an individual tried to hide or conceal themselves, from others, and this is a praiseworthy action. But when you try to hide and conceal yourself as if you're deceiving Allah, you really can't deceive Allah. That's what Allah Jalla mentioned about the actions of the hypocrites. I mean, يَخَادُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَا يَخْدُعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. You cannot deceive Allah. Allah already knows. He knows in your qalb. He knows what you're going to do. He knows, He hears you, He sees you. You can't deceive Him. But however, Allah Jalla says they deceive only themselves and they perceive it not. So you put on a mirror image and you believe that nobody's paying attention. But Allah always has been paying attention. It's never a moment that He's not paying attention. I mean, it's kind of like real, like on the level of reaching the third level of Islam. And the third level of Islam is called ihsan. And now all of us, alhamdulillah, we're reaching. Ihsan has two types, two parts. And the third level of the maratib of Islam is ihsan, that having that God consciousness. That's always being aware that God is aware. That God's, it's either you can be aware that Allah Jalla wa'ala is aware of you, which, as the Prophet says in the hadith of Jibreel, or that's one half. Or you can be conscious of Allah Jalla wa'ala. You understand? Not that only Allah Jalla wa'ala is observing you, but you are conscious of Allah. So that means that when your actions or what you do and what you say, it all takes that in because you know you have Allah Jalla wa'ala watching and hearing. It's a level that, many of us may reach, may not reach. Do you understand? This is from the level of ihsan. So you have to understand, we ask Allah Jalla wa'ala to allow us to reach that level, And if we fall short of that, we ask Allah Jalla wa'ala to allow us to be of those, as we said before, as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in a beautiful hadith, Man lazim al-istighfar, ja'ala Allahu lahu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a what? For him, ala kulli daykin makhraja. We ask Allah Jalla wa'ala to make us of those who are binding to constantly moist our tongues and our hearts and our limbs with istighfar. Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. That we constantly beg Allah Jalla wa'ala for forgiveness for every shortcoming that we do, for every command that we neglect, for every prohibition that we fall into, for every laziness that we do and we have the ability to carry out, for everything that we do which Allah Jalla wa'ala is displeased of. We beg Allah Jalla wa'ala to forgive us and constantly forgive us. And if we understand the need and the real need of having Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgiveness, we would be like the angels, like in Surah Safat, that we will be filling up every space. We will be praying, we will be offering salat, we will be making ruku', we will be making sujood, we will be making qiyam, we will be making sajda, etc., extensively and for a long time because we are in need of Allah Jalla wa'ala forgiveness. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been so merciful, and that you can't even fathom His mercy, but just think about it. There's a hadith Qudsi that is mentioned on the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ said that his Lord said, which is a sacred hadith, that Allah Jalla wa'ala mentioned that there is no sin, whatever action that my servant does, if he intends to do the action, but a bad deed, and he doesn't do the bad deed, all right? You understand? Allah Jalla wa'ala will write that down for him. If he doesn't do the bad deed, meaning he intends to do the bad deed, but he doesn't do the bad deed. You understand? He has the hamd, he has the arada, he wanted to do the bad deed, but for some reason Sheikh Fawzan mentioned, he was deterred from doing that bad deed out of having some fear or sense of Allah Jalla wa'ala, so he stayed away from the bad deed. Allah will still give him 10 rewards. You know, understand? Then Allah Jalla wa'ala says, if my servant intends to do the bad deed, and he actually does the bad deed, then he only get one recompense. This is adl. I want you to understand justice. This is why it's very important that people need to really start paying attention. Whatever bad that is transpiring in the dunya, whatever bad that is happening because Allah Jalla wa'ala in His infinite wisdom allowed those things to happen. Do you understand? And in no way, shape, form, and fashion should you ever raise your finger towards Allah Jalla wa'ala and say that He is being unjust in the matter. We have to understand this. Your children are alone from Allah. Your family members are alone from Allah. You yourself are alone from Allah. You have to understand that. You didn't bring yourself into existence. You don't even know the expiration date to yourself. You didn't bring your children into existence, only in the sense that Allah Jalla wa Ala allowed that seed to go through you and you brought existence. But He's really the Musabbab. He's really the reason why that happened, because He created that. Do you not understand? We can't create souls. Allah Jalla wa Ala creates souls. So we have to really realize things in its true perspective, because sometimes we say stuff that is real detrimental, and we start to behave and to believe certain things that are detrimental. Instead of sharing those memories, instead of being happy that you have met that person. And I'm not telling you to look at death as something like, it don't bother you, it shouldn't bother you. No, it's a separation. So any separation at any time will leave a devastation. We're not saying that. But you need to do it in a proper manner and a proper method. You don't curse Allah Jalla wa Ala. Your knowledge doesn't even equate to Allah Jalla wa Ala. You don't even know the wisdom of that. Do you not understand? If Allah Jalla wa Ala says in the Quran, He tells us in 2 different verses, Allah makes it clear that the children, the offspring, that even the parents, pay attention, and that the husbands and the wives, those who are believers in Allah Jalla wa Ala, that He will reunite them in Jannah. 2 verses. Allah made this clear. He will reunite them. Okay? 2 verses where it's made in the form of a dua. Do you not understand? It's made in the form of a dua, a supplication. It's made in the form of a dua that Allah Jalla wa Ala what aslih li, Allah Jalla wa Ala, correct my affairs and enter me along with my what? My parents. Okay? Enter my offspring along with me, those who are righteous. So we have to make sure we pay attention to that. Allah's wisdom is infinite, and you cannot understand every moving part on the board. So if something is taken from you, whether it's your child, whether it's your loved one, whether it's a family member or not, have the proper adab with Allah. And know that Allah Jalla wa Ala already had written down when that person was going to go. And Allah Jalla wa Ala was in control. And if Allah wants to reunite you with that soul, He will reunite you with that soul. And if Allah knows the outcome of that person's soul, then Allah knows the outcome of that person's soul. This is the importance of how we need to know who Allah is. So we can know exactly how to have the proper iman, the proper belief, the proper outlook, the proper perspective. And that we don't go off the deep end. And that we don't start to allow the shaitan to believe is that Allah Jalla wa Ala is unjust. No, Allah is just. And then He continues to say that what? If He intends to do a good deed and He doesn't do the good deed, Allah still writes it down for him as a good deed. He doesn't do the good deed. And then if He intends to do a good deed and He does do it, then Allah write it down 10 times and it multiplies even more to degrees. So showing you Allah Jalla wa Ala is adl. Allah does not have to increase anything for you. Do you understand? Allah is not binding by anything except that which He binds upon Himself. If Allah places the haqq upon Himself to do it, then He does it. But Allah is not binding to do anything for you. This is something we must understand. So the Shaykh, he continues, he says here, he says, so this sam, he says, meaning that Allah's hearing is inclusive. And the meaning that His hearing is so inclusive that all voices and all sound is heard by Allah Jalla wa Ala. Meaning that nothing is obscure from His hearing, not nothing that is far off or something that is close. Something that is near or something that is far. Allah Jalla wa Ala المعرفة ذكر في البيت الأول نبرة صوت فإنها تكون سرا وإعلانا والثاني قرب الصوت فإنه يكون قريب ويكون بعيد. He says, so that the author rahimahullah in the first line of poetry, he mentioned, look how detailed he get about the sound. He's letting us know that sound can either be private, silently, or audible. That's in the first law poetry. Ibn Qayyim is letting you know how sound is, how the voice can be. It can be silent and it can be loud. Okay? It can be private or it can be public. You understand? In the second line of poetry we're reading here, he's now talking about the proximity of that actual speech, of that sound, of that voice. He's telling you that they can actually be something that is heard distance, that's far off, or something that can be near. Do you understand? It can be something that is far off, a sound that is distance, a voice that is distance, or it can be something near. So Allah Jalla wa Ala is all the same. No matter how far you are, He still can hear you. He's above the 700. No matter how close you are, He still can hear you. Do you understand? So this is clear. He says, فإنه يكون قريبا فصوت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حين أسرع به وكلمه ربه عز وجل فوق السماوات العلى قريب وصوت النون في الباطن يحوت بعيد. إذا مؤلف رحمه الله ذكر أمرين. He says, so when the Prophet ﷺ was taken up to the heavens, when he made the Isra, he went to the Isra, when he actually went up to the seven heavens, Allah takes him up. He said that the voice of the Prophet ﷺ, when he was actually taken up, and when he spoke to Allah Jalla wa Ala above the lofty seven heavens, the Samawat al-Ula, it was actually Qayyim. All right, his voice, it was actually Qayyim. Okay, he says, as for the Salt, the voice of Dhul Nun, and for those who don't know, Dhul Nun is Yunus, and he was named after his mother, Ibn Mata, just like Isa was named after Ibn Maryam. Okay, he was named Yusa ibn Mata, just like Isa was named Isa ibn Maryam. Okay, these are the only two prophets that we know of that was named after their mother, not after their father. Okay, Tayyip, we know why Isa wasn't named after his father, but you have to go back to the works of Ibn Taymiyyah, where he mentioned about the story of Yusuf ibn Mata. Okay, Tayyip, he says here, why he was in the belly of this particular fish, or this particular mammal that was in the actual ocean. So when he was in the deep belly of that mammal, his voice was considered to be what we call ba'id. It's not actually qareeb, it's ba'id, and Allah still heard that. All right, Allah still heard that. He says, even therefore, according to the author Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, when it comes to the sound, the voice, then it's either going to be silent or loud. Wallahu ya'lamuha, and Allah still knows that. Or second is going to be something that is close or far or distant. And either way, all of them are the same to Allah Jalla wa Ala. Then the author, he moves on to the second name. All right, and both of these names should scare us, not in the sense of threat, even though one of the Yasma is a threat, but it should scare us in the sense of the fact that Allah Jalla wa Ala sees and hears everything. There's never a private moment. Do you understand? Do you know how Hayya is developed? We're talking about Hayya in the Rabb. We're not talking about Hayya in the Nas. We're talking about the Hayya that is developed with Allah Jalla wa Ala, and not the Hayya that is developed with the people. Do you know how Hayya is developed? Do you understand? If you're conscious that He is watching and hearing at all times, the verses in the Quran where Allah Jalla wa Ala says that He is not unaware of the dhunub, the sins that are perpetrated by His ibad, His servants. That He's very much aware of what they do and what they don't. All of the different sick stuff that you can think that is taking place in different parts of the world right now. People are being kidnapped, people being trafficking, sex trafficking, pedophile. Think about it. All of the stuff, pornography, murder, you understand? Sadistic stuff, people getting their rocks off. He's privy to that. He can see that. He can hear it. You understand? He's witnessing to that. Also, not only can he hear and see it, he also can hear and see what's in the heart or the breast or even in the minds of individuals who have a sickness, who think of these evil things to do and to perpetrate until they get the will and become a determination, and they actually do it. He's privy to that. This doesn't make him unjust, sort of like how the scientists would think or how the intellectuals would think, because they can only be, their knowledge is only relative. They can only think in relation to how a human would think because they are human. They only can think in relation to what they senses and their emotions will actually be. So for them, their anger will be here. But your anger is nowhere near the anger of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Your patience is nowhere near the patience of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Your retribution is nowhere near the same retribution of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Allah Jalla wa Ala doesn't have time. He created time for us. Do you understand the difference? So what you consider to be a long time that someone has been in bondage, or someone has been persecuted, or someone has been traumatized, or someone has been hurt, what you consider to be a long time is really relatively nothing to Allah Jalla wa Ala. What you consider to be that, and this is why you are short-sighted. And because you're short-sighted, the moment you're thinking that this Lord cannot be a just Lord, but you will make all of the excuses how just this Lord is when it comes to homosexuality. Yeah. When it comes to going against the natural order, you will swear up and down that God is so compassionate. He's so merciful. And you would dictate that. In your mind and your reason, you will make all types of excuses for that. But when it comes to the outside of that, someone being traumatized, someone being hurt, molested, raped, tortured, killed, where's your determination then with Allah Jalla wa Ala? Why is it bad thoughts and not good? Because Allah Jalla wa Ala didn't stop it when you wanted to stop. Because Allah Jalla wa Ala didn't cease the situation when you wanted to cease. Because Allah didn't change it when you wanted to change it. And He already had a plan in motion. And He already knows the outcome of what He wants to do. But yet you don't make all excuses for that. But when it's the other side around, you do. Human beings. This is what they do. You can't comprehend the Creator's actions. You can't comprehend the Creator actually will and plan. He is the best of the one to plan. And when Allah Jalla wa Ala plans something, it's going to be orchestrated and it's going to be carried out and executed. Unlike us, ours falls short because there can be many holes that we're unaware of. Allah's plan doesn't fall short. Allah Jalla wa Ala says be and it is and it happened. And not when you're down, but when Allah Jalla wa Ala wills it to be so. And this is how strong our faith need to be. Prophet ﷺ has a hadith that is a tribute to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, that a person should continue to pray even if they were beaten. You don't understand this. Even if someone was threatening you to commit shirk, that you should still hold on to your deen. Even if this happened, you should still hold on to your deen. That you're going to be tried, tested, you still should hold on to your deen. That you should not split for 1 second, you should hold on to your deen. Even if Allah Jalla wa Ala allow you to be dragged in the streets and be humiliated and to be ridiculed because you are Muslim, to be ridiculed because you believe in Allah, you should be willing, and still have positive thoughts of Allah Jalla wa Ala, to bear that pain, to bear that persecution, to bear that ridicule, to bear that humiliation. You still should be willing to do that and never forsake Allah Jalla wa Ala. This is why you read those stories and they're not fairy tales, where you see a man who get captured by the prisoner of Rome. He get captured by the Romans and they wanted him to forsake the deen of Islam. This is why you see that. Do you understand? Not once did he ever had a shadow of doubt that Allah was Allah. Not once did he ever have a shadow of doubt that Muhammad was the true Nabi, was the prophet and the messenger. And here he was, away from the Prophet away, the Prophet was alive at this time. Here he was, away from the companions with Allah Ta'ala, because this is during the time of Umar ibn Khattab, his reign. But here he is away from the Arabian Peninsula. He is away from the Muslims aside, the Muslims who have been captured with him. And here it is, this actual Roman guy, this Roman, actually what you want to call it at that time, monarch or whatever, this Roman ruler, okay, at this time, emperor, whatever, he wants to actually crack and break this particular Sahabi in two. His name was Abdullah bin Hudhafa. He wanted to break him into two. And now you can see, you can actually see what would allow him to undergo what he went through. They was going to offer him khamr. Unlike us. They was going to offer him khamr anyway. In certain cases, without willful disobedience, certain things are permissible only for you to stay alive. Such as eating pork at a time, it will be, I don't even want to use the term permissible. In this case, I would say that it becomes a necessity for you not to die. Okay? It becomes a necessity. As Allah mentioned in the Quran, it's not willful disobedience. Okay? You only eat of it much that will keep you sustaining or be alive. Not that you eat your full and get happy. You understand? That's the same thing with drinking. Khamr, intoxication. Do you understand? So in Khamr, in this case, they were starving them. Not starving, but they chose to only feed the Muslims and give the Muslims stuff that was haram, which they knew that the Muslims couldn't partake in. And because he did not want the disbelievers to feel as though they have an upper hand over Islam, he chose to starve himself and not drink or partake in the food, which was the swine, and drink from the khamr. Right? Because he did not want them to feel that they had the upper hand of Islam. So this intrigued the ruler. So the ruler had him brought forth that such man would actually show such feat, such courage, okay, in his current circumstances. This is his predicament, but here he is still holding on to the tenets of his faith. And the tenets of the faith is your foundational. You understand that? It's not just actions. It's your foundational. It's Aqidah for a reason. It's that aql, it's that knot that is actually cemented within your qalb. You don't waver from it. It's not a moment that, I'm going to jump from here and I believe that I don't believe. I believe that I don't believe. It's not like that. It's actually like a circle. It's never ending. Your belief is bind, it's tied. And this is how strong his was. So he didn't shake his tenets. So he said to him, he said, forsake the deen of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Don't become a Muslim, I'll let you go. He said, don't become a Muslim. He said, stop being a Muslim and forsake the deen of Muhammad, and I'll let you go. Abdullah bin Hudafa, la. No. The Abdullah bin Hudafa, what did he say? No. He says, if you were to give me the kingdom, because he offered him half of the kingdom. He said, I offer you half of my kingdom. He said, no. He said, you give me the kingdom and the kingdom of all of the Arabs, I still would not forsake the deen of Muhammad. This didn't come from somebody just trying to be brave. This comes from tenets. You want a strong foundation in Islam, your Aqidah got to be straight. This comes from belief, man. He believed that Allah was Allah regardless. He didn't have that misconception that we have today in the 21st century. That we're shadow, we thinking that Allah Jalla wa'ala doesn't have the ability or this because he allowed things to happen to us. That he allowed certain things to happen to us which we have worked for in our own hands. And because he allowed it to happen to us, we are so short-sighted that we don't understand the outcome. Do you not get it? An individual can be thrown into the fire and actually end up in paradise. Do you not get it? He can be tortured in the life of this world and still end up in paradise, which is everlasting. An individual can be tortured in this world and then later on Allah Jalla wa'ala can change the outcome of his situation and become better than what he was in his previous years. This is something that is known as a reality and a fact. But his iman was so strong because of his faith that he didn't forsake. And then the ruler, he says, you know what? He ordered a cauldron, sort of like what they use to melt metal and things like that, this hot fire. And before that, he had them tied up and he had his soldiers to shoot arrows. But he didn't want the arrows to pierce the man's body, the Sahaba body. He wanted to scare him. He wanted to frighten him. Okay, we're going to get him to shake. But he says, shoot it closer to him where you don't pierce him, but he think that it's going to hit him. I mean, you imagine the terror and that. Somebody just tying you up to a tree or pole or something and just shooting arrows. And arrows, they hurt. I mean, they hurt. So, you imagine the strength of someone right across you, right? So when he see that he couldn't crack him, he says, okay, string him up and we're going to place him over top of the fire. I mean, many of you might have already heard this story, but the point I'm trying to get you to understand was his unshakenness, his not breaking in spite of this, is all due to his belief. And that's how strong our belief need to be. So as they was lowering him down, he began to cry. And so the ruler, he said to himself, I got him, right? He just got the Sahaba to cry. And he told his soldiers to stop, bring him forth. And he asked him, why was he crying? And he says that I wasn't crying for me. He said, I know I only have one soul. He said, I hope that I have how much hair that I have on my face is that I have that many souls that I can keep dying over and over for the sake of Allah. Do you understand that? I can die over and over. I wish I had that many souls that I have, and we don't even know how much hair that he had on his face. That many souls to the extent of amounts of hair that I got on my face. So that I can keep coming back, and you're doing the same thing to me over and over for the sake of Allah. Do you understand that? Do you not get it? The ruler never saw that like this in his life. He didn't. So flabbergasted that what did he do? He wanted to free the man. But then Abdullah Hudafa, he didn't want to be free. He says, you free me and all of the Muslim captives. So then he didn't think of himself, he thought of others, which is faith. for us to get to this level, we really got to start studying Aqeedah. Talks like these in regards to learning about Allah's names and attributes is paramount. I mean, it's tantamount that you really have to understand. And you really got to believe in them. Don't ever believe that Allah Jalla wa'ala has ever been unjust to you in any situation or circumstance in your life. Don't ever believe that whatever's going on in your life right now, that Allah Jalla wa'ala is not aware of it. And that Allah Jalla wa'ala does not care. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowing you to go through trial or tribulations and why the God is not merciful. Don't ever have those thoughts in your mind, because they're from the shaitan. They're not from that. Allah Jalla wa'ala is just. He is complete justice. And He is merciful. And He is compassionate. But He also have a retribution. And He also shadid in punishment. Do you not understand that? And He hears and sees. This is why these two attributes and these two names is very detrimental to us, so that we can have a piece of security. Do you understand? Allah Jalla wa'ala, one of His names is As-Salam. That sense in the giver of security. You want to have this safety and security, then take the security in the fact that Allah Jalla wa'ala hears and sees every single thing. This is what you have to understand. So this is how detailed that Allah Jalla wa'ala conceives. He says, وَهُوَ الْبَصِيرُ يَرَى دَبِيبَ النَّمْلَةِ السَّوْدَاءِ تَحْتَ الصَّخْرَةِ الصَّوَّانِ, as it comes in that tremendous hadith. Shaykh Jamil says, Allahu Akbar. نملة صغيرة سوداء في ظلمة الليل تحت صخرة يراها عز وجل. So think about a little ant, a black ant, okay? A little small ant on a dark night creeping under a black rock. We cannot see it, but Allah can see the ant. Do you get it? That there is nothing hidden from Allah, whether it's deep in a cave, whether they bury themselves up, conceal themselves behind buildings, behind towers, whatever, Allah still can see them. If Allah can still see the ant that is small, miniature, okay, on a dark night, that there is no light out, but Allah still can see him under a rock, Allah still can see that ant. That lets you know how sharp, and that lets you know how detailed and intricate the seeing of Allah Jalla wa'ala is. Do you not see that? But you can still see him. He says, لا تكفى عليه. He's not hidden from Allah. He says, هذا من أكفى ما يكون. And if you think about something being hidden, this is like one of the most things that will be hidden in terms of, look how detailed and miniature it is, because it's so small of a creature. You understand? And it's dark, and Allah Jalla wa'ala still have the ability to see it. ومع ذلك فلا يعزب عنه سبحانه وتعالى. And even although along with all of that, Allah still is able to actually see it, meaning that it doesn't escape Allah. He said this is a clear evidence for us of the generality of Allah's sight. Okay? I gotta get ready to stop. He says, وَيَرَى مَجَارِيَ كُوتِ فِي أَعْضَائِهَا وَيَرَى نِيَاطَ عُرُوقِهَا بِعِيَانِ. Ibn Qayyim goes on. He says, وَيَرَى مَجَارِيَ الْكُوتِ. Allah Jalla wa'ala even see the flowing, okay? The strength of the flowing of the blood, brothers and sisters, that flows through the veins of this particular miniature creature. Okay, that flows through its veins of this miniature creature, which is an ant. Allah Jalla wa'ala sees it. SubhanAllah. Shaykh Al-Amin says, وَأَصْلُ أَنْ يَكُونَ مَجَارِيًا. لكن لأجل الندم سكن الياء. He's talking about the reason why it comes as majari in the actual line of poetry, but it's actually really majariya. So that's that point. He says here about it, he says, Allahu Akbar. أَعْضَاءُ النَّمْلَةِ دَقِيقَةٌ جِدًّا. That the limbs, okay, and the veins or the limbs, the body limbs, the limbs or the parts that consist of this creature, this ant, is so miniature. All right? If you try to pick it apart, it's so miniature. Okay? Very miniature. Okay? That you know the strongest part or the strength part which can be found, which is a portion of the strength of the actual ant. إذا أكل شيئا لابد أن ينال أعضاءها شيء من هذا القوت. That if the ant was to eat something, okay, all right, If the ant was to eat, it is necessary that it will be ascertained by this actual limb. Anything. This is from his strength. هذا قوت يجري في أعضائها والله عز وجل يراه وفي هذا أيضا قال الأول. Allah Jalla wa Ala is the one who still sees the vein. He still sees the actual limb. The strongest part of the ant, Allah Jalla wa Ala is able to still see that. And we're not able to see that. We're not able to go in it. They have to study, use a microscope or something like that. Allah Jalla wa Ala is still able to have the ability to do so. That gives you the most sense of security in this world. That no matter how much still upon still that you are, that they can put you in the backward place, whatever, Allah Jalla wa Ala still can see. So you don't never have to believe that you are alone. Allah still can see. Do you understand? He still can see it. And once you have that sense of security, you see how the Quran and the Sunnah is therapeutic. I don't know if you see that. I'm going to have to get ready to stop. But do you see how the Quran and the Sunnah is very therapeutic? I don't think you understand. It's so therapeutic because once you start to believe in it, like you're supposed to believe in it, and once you start to really take it from the pages to the actual column, because the first stage of belief is the heart. That's the first stage of belief. All right? The first stage of the belief is the heart, and that is the foundation. Once you really solidly believe here, do you understand? And you profess it here, it has to emanate here from your limbs. And once you understand that, it's going to allow you to walk through life, even with its trials and its calamities, but you're going to have a better perspective on how to deal with it. And you're not going to fall deep into abyss, and you're not going to isolate yourself from the one who can help, which is Allah Jalla wa Ala. And you're not going to wobble in grief, things that have passed you by, things that have happened in your past or in your childhood that you cannot get over, that you cannot change the outcome of it, that it actually happened instead of learning the lesson from it and thanking Allah Jalla wa Ala for surviving it. And then taking that lesson to get the blessings and from the fruit of the wisdom behind it, you rather wallow in it. And when you wallow in that grief, it does nothing but devour you. And by devouring you, it severs your connection with the Creator you must have. Because the only one who had control in the first place of you even going through the ordeal that you went through was Him. But you don't know how to let that go. And because you don't know how to let that go, you get swallowed or whole by what? By depression. And now you think things that it's not permissible to think. Now you say things that aren't permissible to say. Then you do things that aren't permissible to do when it comes to your Lord Jalla wa Ala. And you cannot sit here and think and say that your iman is so strong. How is it so strong? Because you did not hold on to what you're supposed to hold on. Do you not understand? Do you not? They were being persecuted in Mecca, and the Prophet ﷺ would come by them and tell them what? What would he say to them? He would tell them to be patient. Do not be hasty. He says, Innakum, they kept saying, when will the help of Allah come? And he kept telling them, they were being persecuted in Mecca. He kept telling them, indeed, you are people that are musta'id. You are people that are actually hasty. Musta'id. Musta'jilun, you are people that are very hasty. The help of Allah Jalla wa Ala is ever near. It's always present. But Allah Jalla wa Ala would choose when to descend and help. And your faith need to be that much strong to realize that. And you would navigate through life in a better predicament. And you can actually see how it is, how the companions actually behave and how they actually dealt with life. Because life is hard. When you're from the life of training and association, everything that came with it when he was sent down. That's part of life. And it's not going to stop because you wanted to stop. And it's not going to stop because you here. It's going to be still there after you go into Allah Jalla wa Ala decree to make the last day happen. And he decreed to roll up the earth in his hands. But it's still going to continue to be pressure. It's going to be pressure for you. It's going to be pressure for your parents that came before you. It's going to be pressure for your children. If you have children, Allah grant you that. It's going to be pressure for their children. If they have children, Allah grant them that. Do you not understand? This is life. And Islam gives you the proper lens to understand it. And believing in Allah and His perfect names give you the proper lens to understand it. and believing in his perfect attributes, that they are free of any flaws or defects, and that Allah is never oppressive, and that he's never unjust to his creation, is going to give you the perfect lens to understand that. And to believe in the actions of Allah Jalla wa ala, that they are done with complete wisdom. And Allah Jalla wa ala allow things to happen, and his action is tied to, his action is Mashiach. If he wills, if he doesn't will it, it doesn't happen. He does it when he wants, and they're eternal. You understand that? Gives you the proper lens to understand it. And believe in Allah Jalla wa ala, that his essence, that there is no being like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there is not one or two of Allah, that Allah doesn't have a mother nor a father, that Allah doesn't have a creator, there's nothing before him, as the Prophet ﷺ eloquently explained it. And there will be nothing after Allah Jalla wa ala, and there's nothing above Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you understand? So these things must be something that we nourish. And when we get our iman to that level, we will be like the Sahabas. Trust me. And we won't fall short. But it's not going to happen by one person. It's going to happen with the tawfiq of Allah, and it's going to happen with the camaraderie and the brotherhood between the brothers and the sisterhood between the sisters. That's what that's for. And it's going to happen by way of the advice to one another, and it's going to happen by way of actually helping each other. You understand? This is how it's going to happen. And until we get into that level, we're not going to reach it. We ask Allah Jalla to forgive us for anything that we said wrong in our translation. And every time that you talk, brothers and sisters, know that we are prone to make a mistake. We're prone to make a mistake every time that we talk. We're human beings. And sometimes you cannot protect yourself from it. This is why it is legislated in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he would say this after closing an actual talk. Because you are prone to make a mistake as being a human being that's not perfect when you speak. Do you understand that? Do you understand it's clear? So whatever we said that was incorrect is definitely for myself and the shaitan. Whatever we said that was correct is from Allah Jalla wa ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاkallah khairan, and thank you all for tuning in, inshallah. Also, inshallah ta'ala, we do have a night shift episode 4 coming on this evening. I mean, not this evening, this afternoon, which is like 4 p.m. Me and Isa, we're Isa, inshallah ta'ala. We'll clarify some mistakes that were actually, or not mistakes, some mistakes that were mistaken by others to be a mistake in regards to some things that we have said that might seem a little bit confusing to others in regards to calling people to certain things and having a platform to teach dawah. Inshallah ta'ala, hopefully be enlightened to those who tune in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.